A little bit about Anahi. Anahi is a bilingual licensed marriage and family therapist in the Inland Empire. She has experience in serving individuals and families of diverse backgrounds and works from a culturally sensitive approach. Her specialties include early childhood mental health, play therapy, family therapy, parent support, impact of social injustice on resilience, anxiety, depression, and racial and immigration trauma. Her goal is to provide support and empower clients and families to improve their social, emotional functioning and find happiness and hope within themselves. Please help me give a virtual welcome to Anahi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sarai, for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly before I start. Okay. Right. So a little bit more about why I'm here giving this webinar today. Like Sarai mentioned, I worked with all kind of age groups. Currently, I'm working at a private practice clinic in Redlands. I've worked all over the Inland Empire, serving different families and individuals. And right now, with the pandemic, I've seen kind of an increase in our topic that we're going to talk about today, burnout. So I really wanted to kind of share just from my experience in this field of working with people who have experienced burnout, but also where burnout has led to other complications, things like anxiety, depression. So this is one of the things that I think a lot of people experience at one point or other in their lives. So it's important to know what burnout is, to recognize it, and also to know how to combat it or prevent it with self-care. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. So our objectives today are to recognize the signs of burnout, learn what burnout looks like, and also what it feels like, and then to talk about the self-care component, things that you can use to prevent and to fight burnout, right? So we're going to get started with what burnout is. Burnout can be defined as the depletion or exhaustion of a person's mental and physical resources. And this is due to prolonged, long-term, unrealistic expectations. So internal, the things that we feel we need to be doing, the expectations we have for ourselves, but also externally, the expectations that society, work, family, partners have on us, right? So it's important, that's a really key piece when we're talking about burnout, is knowing that it comes from not being able to meet those unrealistic expectations. A lot of times when we talk about burnout, people think about work because it comes from the term burnout, and the research behind burnout is really focused a lot on the occupational piece, and occupation is what we do for our work, but also an occupation of every day. So for example, a child's occupation is school, right? A stay-at-home parent's occupation is being a parent, right? So occupation has to do with the things that we do at our job most of the time, but also outside of that and other expectations from us in other areas of our life, right? So the other really key term when we're talking about burnout is depletion, right? It's a different type of exhaustion, not like regular tired. It's completely depleted of those resources, right? As we can see here, like in the little image, like there's no battery left, right? The answer to who can experience burnout is really anybody can experience burnout. There are certain types of people, lifestyles, types of work that can lead to a higher probability of experiencing burnout, but really anyone can experience burnout, right? A lot of the research in burnout is done on helping professions. So things like counselors, human resources, people that work with people, basically most of us. Also education, teachers, admin staff, principals, after school programs, Boys and Girls Club, those kinds of areas of education. There's a lot of burnout, especially during the pandemic, right? With the expectations of everything has to be normal. The standards of education are the same. We expect that of the students. We expect the teachers to continue teaching in the same way, except that we're having huge obstacles and stressors in our life, right? Healthcare workers have probably always experienced burnout, but this past few years with the ongoing pandemic, the burnout rates for healthcare workers have skyrocketed. And currently in my practice, I see a lot of healthcare workers that are coming into therapy as we're coming to hopefully the end of the pandemic, just the effects of the burnout that they've had, burnout has had on them and their life, and not being able to function, not being able to continue to go to work. First responders, right? So anyone can really experience burnout, but especially people in these fields, parents, students, when there's external expectations of you that you're not able to meet. There's different signs or symptoms of burnout, and there's different categories of them. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this feels like and looks like for individuals. So there's the physical component, the emotional component, and the behavioral component. So for the physical signs of burnout, it can feel in your body like tiredness or fatigue, and not just that normal, like I've had a long day of work and I'm coming home and I'm feeling tired, or I've had a long day of school or caring for children, but people who are experiencing burnout, they wake up tired, they don't feel rested, and they have this constant state of fatigue. And regardless of what they do, they continue to feel tired and continue to struggle to find the energy to do the things that they have to do in their life, right? You also see more illness. So when you are more stressed, your immune system is compromised, so you're more likely to get sick, right? So maybe having frequent colds, or noticing that you frequently have a stomach ache or headaches, right? So you notice more illness. Also, a lot of tension headaches and muscle pain. And the muscle tension, specifically when we're dealing with burnout and stress, you feel it in your jaw, you notice yourself clenching your fists, a lot of tension in your back, shoulders, and neck area, right? You also notice changes in your appetite. So maybe you're not as hungry as you used to be before. You feel like you don't have time to eat, or maybe you feel like no matter what you eat, you constantly have to be eating or snacking. Maybe you're noticing some stress eating, right? So any changes in your appetite that are not on purpose. And then changes in your sleep, difficulty falling asleep. When you're trying to get rest, you're noticing yourself kind of playing a to-do list in your head, or you are thinking of what you have to do the next day. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night with stress dreams, or dreams about being late to work or about forgetting something. And then it can also have the opposite effect of feeling like you need to sleep more than you would have normally. And because of the fatigue, you feel like you have to sleep more, and you sleep more, but you still don't feel rested, right? So those are some of the physical signs, the main ones. And now we're going to move on to talking about some of the emotional signs of burnout. So what this can feel like emotionally is feeling a lot of apprehension or anxiety first thing in the morning, feeling a lot of anxiety at night, feeling a lot of anxiety during the day, particularly when it comes to the occupation that is creating this burnout. So if it's your job, for example, feeling apprehension about going to work. It can look like difficulty concentrating, right? It's hard to focus because you don't have that mental energy. So maybe you were able to focus for an hour before, and now you find yourself 20 minutes into a task, you're zoning out, right? Being irritable and lack of patience, this is a really big one. Maybe you find yourself snapping at a coworker or a family member or your child, things that normally would not have bothered you, but when you're feeling extra stress, extra pressure, and burnout, you respond more irritable to those situations. Also, being unable to relax. Maybe you're trying to do something that normally you'd be able to relax if you weren't feeling burnt out, but because of the burnout, you can't enjoy that thing, right? Feeling overwhelmed. That's a word I hear a lot with individuals who are experiencing burnout. I just feel so overwhelmed. No matter what I do, I can't catch up. My to-do list never ends, right? And that pressure is always there. No matter how much they get done, no matter how much they do, that pressure stays the same. When we are experiencing burnout, a lot of people have memory issues and they describe it as like brain fog, or things feel blurry, right? It's hard to use all of those cognitive resources when you're burnt out. So memory can be an issue. Feeling the sense of failure, of self-doubt, feeling helpless, trapped, and defeated. No matter what I do, it's not good enough. No matter what I do, my students are learning. No matter what I do for my clients, no matter what I do for my patients, just feeling really hopeless. And all the work and effort that you're doing, that your organization is doing, isn't enough. That's what it feels like. There's also this big part of detachment, feeling really alone, feeling nobody else feels this way. Nobody else is struggling as hard as I am. And the loss of motivation, because you're feeling so hopeless, you don't feel as motivated to meet your goals, at work, to meet your goals at home, to meet your personal goals, right? And you see, you hear comments that are very cynical or negative. So maybe you've said this yourself or heard this from somebody else, like it doesn't matter. Someone brings an idea, like that's not going to work, right? When you see people going to those types of comments, they're probably experiencing some type of burnout, right? And just in general, lack of satisfaction and accomplishment just in your personal life and in the things that you do, the things that you love, you're not satisfied by them when you're feeling burnt out. And some of the behavioral things that you might do when experiencing burnout: withdrawing from your responsibilities. So some people say, like, I shut down, I feel kind of paralyzed, and I don't do anything. I know I have to work, but I'm just staring at my computer. Or I know I have to make dinner for myself, but I'm just sitting on the couch. So it's this sense of withdrawing, because you're so tired, you're almost just shutting down, isolating from others because you feel alone, because you feel like other people don't feel this way. We don't talk about it, right? So then you isolate yourself from your social support, which makes it worse. Things like procrastinating or taking longer to do things. I used to be able to do this in 20 minutes, and now it's taking me an hour, right? I used to be able to get through my work tasks in the workday, and now it's taking me a week to do what I used to do in a day. And when you're experiencing high levels of burnout, you are trying to cope with it. So you're using things like food, drugs, alcohol to cope, things that are usually maladaptive or not good for us, right? Because of the irritableness, you're taking your frustration out on others, right? And you also see things like calling off sick more, because you're burnt out, right? Or coming in late because you weren't able to get up in the morning. So now that we've talked about the different signs, and this isn't an exhaustive list, there's other things, but these are some of the main ones that I wanted to highlight. I want to talk about, we know what burnout is, we know what it looks like, we know what it feels like. And maybe you're thinking, oh, I'm checking off a lot of these things. This is someone I know. This is a family member. This feels like things I've experienced now or in the past. Now what? So the good thing is that we have something that can help prevent and reduce all of those effects of burnout, and that is self-care. Self-care, it's very self-explanatory what it is. It literally means taking care of yourself, right? And there's many different ways that we can do this. We're going to talk about some of these. But before we do, I want to address some myths and misconceptions about self-care. As a therapist, when I'm working with people, also outside of therapy in my personal life, I like to talk about self-care. And there's a lot of responses that I hear. So I wrote down some of those for you guys today. The number one thing that I hear about self-care is, I don't have time. I don't have time. I'm too busy. We're talking about all these expectations that my job has of me. I don't have time for it. So it's a myth that self-care has to take a long time. People say self-care is a luxury, right? And I always say self-care is a need. We need self-care to be able to be healthy physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and all of those aspects of our life. It's not a luxury to take care of yourself. It's a need. And self-care isn't, I think when we think of self-care, we think of like a whole week of being at a resort or a spa day. And no, we can't do those things. Most people can't do those things on a regular basis. And I think that's why I hear these things, right? I also hear a lot from people in the helping fields and from parents, older siblings, right? But I have to take care of others first, right? And if I take care of others, then that's going to help me. But what's actually happening, the more that you're focused on taking care of everybody else, you keep forgetting yourself, you keep putting yourself last, and that's what's leading to the burnout. And that's what's contributing to it. So it's kind of that analogy about being on an airplane, and when they do that safety protocol on the airplane, they say, put your oxygen mask on first before you can put it on the person next to you, because that's how important it is to take care of yourself first. You need to be able to sustain what you're doing. You need to be able to sustain your day-to-day, and you can't do that if you don't take care of yourself, right? Some people are like my friend Luisa from Encanto, who say like, I don't need it, or I'm used to it, I can keep going, I'm strong. I hear that all the time from people. And the misconception behind that is that people who need self-care are weak, right? And it actually takes a lot of strength to recognize what our limitations are, and to recognize when we need to take time for ourselves, to recognize where we need support. That's what our strength is, right? So hopefully hearing some of these things helps when those thoughts pop into your head. Some people say taking time for myself or doing something for myself is selfish. Or if I take time for myself now, it means I'll have more work later. But just from my personal experience and the experience that I have working with people, if you have a cell phone and it's already at 2%, most of us plug it in, right? We want to plug it in because we know we're going to need it later, or we're going to want to use that cell phone later. So we plug it in. but we're okay with not plugging in ourselves. We're okay with letting ourselves continue to be at 2%, continuing to be just on that verge. You don't expect that from a cell phone. So why do you expect that of yourself, right? And if the effects of burnout include things like withdrawal and procrastination, it's going to be more work. You're kind of fighting an uphill battle, trying to keep going when you're already experiencing burnout, right? You need that energy. So now we can talk a little bit about the different types of self-care. So there are lots of types of self-care that we can really focus on. And it looks really different for each individual. What might be self-care for me might be stressful for you, right? So it's really, really important to get really personal about it and really curious about it. There is so many resources out there about different activities that you can do for self-care, right? As far as physical, like going on a walk, taking care of yourself physically, exercising, the emotional component, right? Learning about your feelings and why you feel the way that you do, expressing your feelings, the social component, setting boundaries with people in your life, having those interactions that leave you feeling fulfilled and joyful and happy, and distancing yourself from interactions that deplete you and are difficult, right? There's financial self-care, things like being budgeting or saving money or even splurging can be a type of financial self-care, right? And a big one for a lot of people is a spiritual component and doing things that fulfill them spiritually in their life, right? So there's other types of self-care, and it looks really different for each individual, right? So one thing I want to focus on is that personal piece and knowing yourself and knowing what makes you happy. That's a big one. And I think having boundaries, right? Having boundaries with work, right? When I'm off of work, I stop working. When I'm done having, when my time is up with having a conversation with someone in my sessions, it's hard to say like, oh, I'm sorry, we have to end here today, but I have 10 minutes so that I can go to the bathroom, get some water, and prepare myself for my next session. So it feels selfish, but I need to take care of myself or I won't be able to be present for that next client, right? So boundaries and the personal piece are really important. Self-care can be as little as lighting a candle or doing your bed, because it makes you feel good, it makes you feel happy, it brings a sense of calm or peace to you, right? It takes literally 30 seconds to light a candle. If that's something that you enjoy, that brings you joy, right? So I really encourage everyone to find those little moments of self-care throughout your day, right? And find those activities and things in your life, as small as they seem, to be able to fill your cup, right? Fill your cup, meaning fill up that battery that's been depleted, so that you have energy for the other things in your life. And I'm sure you all can go on your phone quickly or on your computer and do a search like self-care activities, and hundreds of things will pop up for you. But two things that I really wanted to focus on and share with you today. One is self-compassion. And self-compassion has made a huge difference just to me in my life, but also in the people that I work with, the people that come to therapy with me. And this really is about treating yourself like you would treat other people, right? There's a lot of focus in how we treat other people and spreading kindness, because that's really important, right? And there's not enough focus though on how you treat yourself. So this can make a huge difference in that burnout and any other kind of things that you're struggling with. If your instinct is to criticize yourself or judge yourself, why can't you get it together? Why are you having such a hard time? Other people can do it. That's contributing to that burnout. That's contributing to that unrealistic expectation of yourself. So I always tell clients that I work with, that thing that you're saying about yourself, would you say that to your best friend? Would you say that to your family member that you love? And most of the time, the answer is no, I would never say that out loud to a friend, right? When a friend is feeling burnt out and they're sharing, hey, I'm having a hard time, you don't cross your arms and say like, well, why? Figure it out. If you do that, you might want to reevaluate what kind of friend you are, but also we're okay to speaking to ourselves in that way. And really practicing self-compassion can make a huge difference in our lives. And I have a resource for that I sent to Sarai that she can put in the chat if you want to do more research on self-compassion and self-compassion exercises. And the last thing that I want to talk about is mindfulness. So what mindfulness is living in the present, being in the moment. So the reason that a lot of stress, anxiety, burnout happens is because we're either stuck in something that happened or we're worried about something that might happen or is going to happen, and we're not able to live our life in the present in that moment. So if I'm at work and I go home and then I say, oh, I'm just thinking about the things I have to do at work, I'm not present at home. I'm at work. My mind is at work. So mindfulness is being fully present in that moment and using my senses, taste, hearing, sight, smell, touch, to enjoy all of the things that are happening in that moment, right? So there's lots of mindfulness practices that we can do. Mindfulness is something that's really used in like meditation, because you have to be focused and you have to be present in what's right in front of you. And this makes a huge difference in people's lives. There's so much research behind mindfulness, and it's really used. There's different types of therapy that I use, but it's used in so many types of therapy, and it's really kind of a center for wellness, is being able to be present. So I really encourage everyone to find those moments in your life where you can be mindful, because that turns something like taking a shower into self-care, because it's just something I have to do. But now I'm in my shower and I'm thinking about what I smell, I'm thinking about what the warm water feels like, and it turns something that I do on autopilot into something intentional and something for me. So I love talking about mindfulness and self-compassion, and if I could, I would talk about them all day. So some resources on that. And just lastly, I want to go through some tips. It can be overwhelming to think, where do I get started? How can I, there's so many things that I want to try. There's so many things that I want to do to incorporate into my life self-care, because I haven't been taking care of myself. How do I do it? So my first tip is to start small. You don't have to go from 0 to 100. I've never taken a yoga class. I've never gone on a walk. I've never done mindfulness or self-compassion. I want to do all of those things. That's great. But let's start with something small, right? Set an attainable goal, something that feels doable for you, something that you can accomplish and you can commit to. For example, you might start with, I'm going to go outside. I'm not even going to go on a walk. My goal is just to go outside and look at what I see outside my window or in my backyard or in my front yard. That's my goal. And I'm going to do that once a week. Okay, perfect. And then you can build on that. Once you start to see the effects that self-care, mindfulness, self-compassion have on your life, you can build on that. But you have to start somewhere small and with a goal that feels doable. I also think it's really important to identify your strengths and your resilience, the things that you've gone to already, right? The things that you're already good at. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at times in your life that you were having a difficult time, you were feeling burnt out maybe. What did you do? Something helped you get through that. What was that? Right. I really said earlier, focusing on what brings you joy, what brings you peace, because we can go and we can see all of these like wellness, like Instagram accounts, and they give all of these recommendations, and that's great. And that's what they dedicate themselves to. But for you in your life, what is that for you? It's really important that you make it personal so it has meaning for you. Something I also tell people is you don't know if it's going to work for you unless you try it. Some people say, oh, I can't do meditation. Oh, have you tried it? No. We'll try it. Oh, I've done deep breathing and it didn't work for me. Oh, tell me, how did you do deep breathing? Well, I took a deep breath once and I didn't feel more calm. Well, try again. So give it a good shot to see if it's something that's going to work for you. You know, my last tip is seek support. If you're having trouble in finding finding time, finding a place, finding resources for self-care, ask people, ask your social network, but also go to therapy, right? People always tell me I have to plug it in because I'm a therapist. I'm biased, right? But people tell me like, you think everyone needs therapy? I do, because we can all benefit from it. So with that being said, I know we're out of time. So I have those resources that Sarai sent in the chat, the self-care assessment. You can go through and kind of check what areas of self-care you're already good at and what areas of self-care you need to improve in. The self-compassion, the managing stress, those resources are there free for you. And I like to end a lot of my sessions when people are talking about things that are really difficult, problems, people are talking about trauma. I always like to end with, what will you do to take care of yourself today? And I encourage you to do that for yourself, right? In your day-to-day, after a hard day, after a good day, always be asking that. What are you gonna do to take care of yourself so that you can practice self-care? All right.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Anahi. I was hoping we could ask you a couple of questions that people sent in ahead of time. If anybody has any questions as well, you can go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. And while I ask these questions, so one of the questions was, can someone be predisposed to burnout?
Yeah, I think like we talked about, like certain lifestyles, right? So if you have a lifestyle where you're experiencing a lot of stress, you have a high stress job, people who are perfectionists or type A personalities, right? They have really high expectations of themselves. So because burnout comes from those unrealistic expectations, you experience more burnout. I think also, when it comes to minorities, people of color, first generation immigration issues, right? There's higher levels of burnout because there's more pressure, internal and external, right?
Thank you for answering that.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question was, is there any differences in the signs of burnout for children?
Yeah, so today we really talked a lot about what this looks like in adults, but for children, I would focus more on the behaviors. So in like elementary school to teens, things like acting out or lashing out with anger, right? Like anger at their parents. I also see a lot of kids who are in sports or extracurriculars, or who have a curriculum. Maybe they attend a school that's high achieving, or they're in a gifted program. They experience more of that pressure. So they'll see things like anxiety before taking the test, or maybe difficulty breathing. They tell you that they have sweaty palms or their heart racing with some of that anxiety, and tantrums, right? For kids, it looks like tantrums, lashing out, a lot of irritability. Yeah.
And to follow up with that question, so how can you support children that are experiencing burnout?
I think the number one thing, if you are someone who this kiddo, someone important in this kiddo's life, like a parent, a mentor, a teacher, is modeling. So a lot of times children have these high expectations of themselves, not always because people have these high expectations, but they see other people in their life. They see a parent who has high expectations of themselves. So number one, I would say model what it looks like to be able to take a break, to be able to recognize a limitation, right? And let them know that this is something normal. Like, you're experiencing frustration, you're experiencing anger. We all experience those things. This is what I do when I'm feeling those things. So modeling that it's okay, validating them, and also teaching them what we can do.
Okay, thank you so much. We are out of time, so if anyone has any questions, you could go ahead and email them to me. I sent my email in the message earlier with all of our links, and I will forward them over to Anahi. Thank you all so much for being here today, and thank you, Anahi, for hosting this, for facilitating this webinar. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for everyone who came.